Hi, I'm Mike Beliveau, and this week's video is going to be something a little bit different for this channel. Typically, I come to you with historical firearms, mostly shooting black powder, though not always. But today I want to do something a little bit different. And it brings us into the modern age. It brings us into today. Because I was asked a question recently that I thought was an interesting question, just in terms of the mental exercise involved. And that question was quite simply, if you could only have one handgun, what handgun would it be? And that's quite a question, right? Because I have a lot of handguns, way more than I need. I hate to admit that, but it's true. More than I need, not as many as I want. And therefore, I have guns that are specialist guns for their purpose, right? So I've got guns that I carry for self-defense, a couple of them. And I've got guns that I use just for competition. And then I've got a whole host of guns I use for just general plinking and target practice and having fun with. But if I could only have one gun that would cover all of those bases, what would it be? And that's an interesting question. And it's one that you should ask yourself as well. And it's not like it's a foolish question, because certainly at this point in my life, I'm able to afford more guns. And I have had the good habit of rarely ever selling a gun. So guns that I bought early in life, I still have. And when I didn't have much money, I added guns very slowly to the collection. But I didn't make the mistake of trading off what I had to get something new. I just kept what I had, and I didn't buy something new until I could save up my shekels and get it, right? So consequently, I have a fair amount of guns today. And as a gun writer for 30 years, people think that gun companies give you guns. That's pretty rare. Though I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, because it has happened to me in several cases. But for the most part, you get to buy guns at a discount if you're a gun writer. And I took advantage of that over the years, buying a number of guns I liked that I tested. So I accumulated a fair collection of guns, happy to say. But there was a time when I certainly couldn't afford to have a whole lot of guns. And you may only be able to afford to have one gun. And there's nothing wrong with that. Or you may be unwilling to spend the money to have more than one gun because you have other priorities in your life and you're not a gun collector. All good reasons. So for whatever reason, if you could only have one gun, what would it be? Well, when I took a look at that question, I had to ask myself, what do I use a handgun for, right? And for me, there were four things. Conceal carry and self-defense, number one, probably the most crucial, because if your one gun doesn't fill that role, then you can't defend yourself. So no matter what else it does well, if defending yourself is important to you, then all other things become secondary. But the second thing that I do would be to have an open carry gun that I use principally in the woods as hunting backup, that sort of thing. And that has to be able to meet certain criteria. I wouldn't take a .22 caliber pistol to finish off a deer or to shoot a coyote with, right? So it's got to meet certain criteria as well. And then the third category, and the one that's probably the most used, even though it's not critical, so to speak, is target practice, training, and plinking. And of course I love to do that because I love to shoot. And typically I shoot a lot of guns, usually a different gun every time, to kind of rotate through the collection. But, what one gun could do those three roles? And then the last role is competition shooting, which may not be something that you do at all. And it's not something that I do much of anymore at all either in terms of handgun shooting. I have to say I'm more likely to shoot flintlocks in competition now than I am modern guns. But I'll put it on the list anyway, because it's possible I will want to shoot a match, and my one gun should be able to do that. So when I look at all of that criteria, and I say what one gun covers those bases for me, well, what I come up with is a medium frame, 4-inch barreled, double action revolver, chambered for .357 Magnum, like this Model 66, which would be probably my one choice if I could only have one gun. The Smith & Wesson Model 66. So why does this work for me? And I know that there are probably some of you who are looking at this gun and saying, oh my God, what a FUD. And okay, maybe I am. You know, the fact of the matter is, I'm not adverse to revolvers. I probably shoot more semi-automatic modern guns than I do revolvers, but I'm not adverse to double action revolvers because I grew up with them. When I was young, double action revolvers ruled the roost for law enforcement, for civilians, and that's what I learned to shoot growing up. So I'm quite familiar with them, but that's not the reason I chose it. The reason I chose it is because it really does cover all of those bases. And, you know, we'll just take them in order. So if we look at a gun for concealed carry or self-defense, a lot of you probably carry a 9mm semi-automatic right now, right? Nothing wrong with that. Or maybe carry a .45 ACP semi-automatic. Nothing wrong with that. For many years, decades, I carried a 1911 in .45 ACP. But I noticed 10 or 15 years ago, and I'm going to see if I can... I don't know if you guys can see that ugly digit of mine. That's my trigger finger. And as you may notice, it's got a pretty wicked bump on the knuckle, and it's got a real funky little thing over here. And what that ended up being is psoriatic arthritis, which I only have in this finger, which was caused by, guess what? Shooting heavy loaded guns a lot over many years. Because, of course, that was my stock in trade, you know, 45 Colts, 44 40s, 45 ACPs. That's what I shot the most of all my life. And I developed the psoriatic arthritis. And this knuckle is actually huge. There are some single actions with smaller trigger guards, like one of my old Colt Navies, my second generation Navy that has it's an early model. And the trigger guard is the small oval type. I can hardly get my finger into that. And some of the little pocket pistols, I can hardly get my finger into the trigger guards. But I got to the point that when I shot a lot of 45s or 44s, which I still do more than I should probably, I ended up with very sore hands. And of course, I've got rheumatoid arthritis and all the other joints in my body. So, you know, after shooting maybe 100 practice rounds of 45 ACP or 45 Colt, or even a heavily loaded 44 cap and ball, the next day I can hardly make a fist. So I ended up switching my carry gun to another 1911, a 38 Super. And I carried that for a lot of years. And I would alternate that with a Browning high power in 9mm. But I'm not that crazy about 9mm as a defensive cartridge, and I know it works with modern bullets. It's just fine. And if you carry one, I'm not saying you made a bad choice. I'm just saying it was not a choice that I liked. I want to bring a little more oomph to the game. So I had a 40 Smith & Wesson caliber Browning high power, custom converted to 357 SIG, and that is my main carry gun right now. If that's laid up for some reason or I'm doing something with it, I will go back to my 38 Super. So those are the guns that typically I carry now. But neither one of those guns would I want for my open carry woods gun. They are not great plinkers because they're fairly expensive to plink with. Even the brass is expensive. So if I plink with a 9mm, sometimes I don't even bother picking up the brass because I have so much 9mm brass at home. Sometimes I just get lazy about that. But I don't think those are great for filling the other categories. You know, the open carry, the plinking, or the competition. I have shot the 38 Super in competition, but it's not the most sensible choice these days. You won't find that many people. It used to be very popular in USPSA when USPSA was known as IPSC, but not so much anymore. There are a lot better choices. So, okay, that's my carry gun right now. But if I could only have one gun, because those guns make sense because I have other guns to fill the other roles, I can only have one gun. Well, that 357 Magnum is a great carry gun. For one thing, loaded with 357 Magnums, say 125 grain hollow points. Just flip over to my little ballistics chart here. Okay, so if that Model 66 is loaded up with 125 grain hollow points, let's say Federal Classics, they will come out of the muzzle at 1,400 feet per second, and they have an energy hit of 584 foot-pounds. Okay, just to put that in perspective, a 9mm with 124 grain jacketed hollow point only has 377 foot-pounds of energy behind it. So it's not quite double, but it's a big boost up. Now my 357 SIG with the same size bullet, 125 grain jacketed hollow point, that comes out at 1,430 feet per second, and it hits with 568 foot-pounds. So they are very closely matched. And if you want to get more energy than that, because that's more energy, both of those have more energy than a 45 ACP jacketed hollow point 230 grain. That only has 461 foot-pounds of energy. So if you want to top the 357 Magnum or the 357 SIG, you've got to go to 10mm. And that, with a 175 grain bullet, will lay 607 foot-pounds of energy on the target. So that's Thor's hammer right there. And I will also say 10mm works for concealed carry, though it's generally a pretty big gun. And it works as an open carry gun as well. You could use that as a woods gun. So 10mm, if you're a semi-auto guy and you really want it, well, that would be the gun. Now, as a plinking gun, it's not a great choice because your ammo choices are all expensive and they're all heavy hitters, right? So you're going to have a lot of recoil, you're going to have everything that goes with it. Because it's not a lot of ammo versatility when you're in a semi-auto. And same thing with competition. You don't see very many 10mm autos used in competition. You'll get some funny looks probably if you show up with that. But it'll fit the first two categories, and it's about the only semi-auto that I would trust in categories 1 and 2, self-defense and open carry, both to cover both of those bases. But anyway, a 357 Magnum revolver absolutely will fill the role for self-defense. And you know, you look at a revolver, a lot of people think, well, gosh, you can't really conceal that. I mean, it's like, you know, where are you going to tuck that away? Well, to be honest with you, this gun does not conceal much differently than my Browning High Power, which is also a full-size steel gun, and is roughly the same size. So I end up using the same brands of holster for this gun for concealment purposes as I do for my Browning High Power. I use a 1791, outside on the belt holster. And that's kind of a pancake design, nice holster. And I use a We the People inside the waistband holster for both of them. Same, right? And it conceals quite well. Now, this gun has Jerry Mislick grips on it. And with the rounded configuration, it doesn't print badly. If I really wanted to make it more concealable, I would put Eagle grips, Secret Service grips on it. Those cut down the size. They make it a little harder to control, I think. But they really are good concealment grips. But I find that this grip conceals quite well. Not a problem. And revolvers also give you the benefit of putting your bore axis very close to your hand, right? The bore is quite low if you hold it right. If you hold it on that recoil shield, right? You're right up there. So the guns are more controllable than you might think, even with full bore magnum loads in it. So it's a pretty good choice for self-defense. It ticks that box off. Now, if we move to category number 2 for me, which is open carry, in a belt holster in the field, it's kind of a no-brainer because right now I already carry a .357 Magnum double-action revolver for that role. I carry a Ruger Security 6. It has a 6-inch barrel, which I think is an excellent field barrel. But if I can only have one gun, I would want a 4-inch because I think it's more versatile and you don't give up much. A little bit of sight radius, a little bit of velocity, but not much at all. And you get a more useful gun. So I would gladly swap out my Ruger for a 4-inch model 66 or any other medium frame 4-inch model .357 Magnum. Now, the reason that gun works well for both of those roles is because revolvers give you a lot of flexibility for ammunition. So when I'm out in the field, I typically have the gun loaded with very heavy .357 Magnums, 180 to 190 grain, either jacketed flat points or lead semi-wide cutter gas check bullets. And those hit with a tremendous amount of force. In fact, let me give you the tail of the tape. So as an example, if we look at double taps, flat-nosed lead gas check bullets, they will come out of the barrel at 1,300 feet per second, and they hit with 676 foot-pounds of energy, which is a huge load. Now, 44 Magnum might be better in bear country, but you can make that round work. Shot placement is going to be key. I mean, I try not to be in a position where I got to shoot bears to save my life. I think it's good policy not to, but you never know. A couple of years ago, I was camping, and I got up in the morning, and I found a pile of bear poop 5 feet away from the corner of my tent. Okay, so you just don't know what's going to happen. Now, I do camp in coyote country quite a bit. Didn't used to be coyote country around here, but now there are a tremendous number of coyotes in Pennsylvania. And if you've ever been alone in the woods, and I camp alone, not as often as I used to. I used to make a real habit of it. Now I camp more at events. But if you camp alone in an area that's heavily populated with coyotes, it is an interesting experience at night because they are all around you, and they are the noisiest critters on God's green earth. But there are a lot of them around, and I certainly feel better if I've got something to deter them from checking out whether or not I'd be a tasty burger for them, So a 357 Magnum with the right bullets is absolutely one-shot coyote medicine. It's a good choice. So I consider the Model 66 to cover those two boxes very well. Click, click. Now, number 3, target shooting, plinking. Again, that's a no-brainer. I shoot lots of different guns, and I probably shoot more black powder than anything else plinking around. I got to be honest about that. But I do shoot quite a bit of modern guns as well, and I enjoy it. And of course, it's a whole lot less trouble than shooting black powder. So if I'm in a lazy mood, I'm certainly going to be shooting regular smokeless ammo. And I generally reach for either a double action revolver in 38 Special, 357 Magnum, but I also have quite a few 38 Special chambered guns, or one of my older 9mm semi-autos, because I love shooting those old semi-auto guns. So my choice will be one of those. So if I can only have one gun, and the 66 is working fine for Category 1 and Category 2, Category 3 plinking, well, it's a no-brainer. The 66 works tremendously for that. And once again, the reason revolvers are so good for that is ammunition versatility. So just like I can take that 125 grain jacketed hollow point for two-legged problems, and I can take that 180 grain lead gas check bullet for four-legged problems. For a relaxing day plinking, I can shoot anything from 38 Special 148 grain full wad cutters, which are like nothing, pew pew, to 158 grain standard 38 Specials, 125 grain 38 Specials, plus Ps if I want, right? Any of that stuff. And it's cheap to reload. I don't lose the brass. It's very easy. So that would fill the plinking gun role beautifully. You can shoot single action or you can shoot double action. Though I have to say, shooting a double action revolver double action is a lot of fun. And it's not as hard as some people seem to think it is. And if you master double action shooting with a double action revolver, you will shoot your semi-auto better, because you'll really have mastered trigger control, and it's just worth thinking about. So, absolutely works for categories 1, 2, and 3. Now, category 4, this is like the weak link, because using it in competition depends on what you like doing for competition, really. And if that's the most important thing on your list, then you probably want to get a gun for competition, and you'll plink with it, and you might even carry, or you might just hope that the world treats you kindly. I don't know. But if we're sticking to the one-gun theme, will the 66 work for competition? Yes. Because IDPA and USPSA, they have revolver classes. So you're just shooting the revolver class. Not so bad. Get you some speed loaders, practice, and off you go. So it'll absolutely work in all those areas. And you can, of course, use lighter ammunition. And the beauty of those guns is, like I said, that one gun will shoot anything from 190 grain sledgehammers down to 148 grain doop-doops. And you don't have to change out the recoil springs to make it work. You won't have feeding problems. It doesn't have jamming issues. In fact, I'm going to show you a clip in a minute of me shooting this gun. And this is one of the beauties of a revolver. The second chamber that I fire doesn't go off. It's got a light primer strike. But instantaneously, I've got the third chamber putting a bullet downrange. So if you're in a gunfight and you've got your 9mm, plastic Fantastic Wonder semi-auto, and you get a late primer strike, it doesn't go off. Or you get a stovepipe, or you get jamming into your feed ramp. Well, you got to clear that jam. Got to clear that jam, get that out of there, and shoot the bad guy before he shoots you. That can be a problem, which is why they have people practice that stuff all the time. Well, with a revolver, that's not a problem. You just pull a trigger again. Click, bang. Done. Problem solved. Also, as far as gunfights go, for civilians, remember, we're not taking on the cartel. We're not storming Osama bin Laden's compound, right? If you're a civilian, you're minding your own business, and some thug tries to take you at the ATM. Or, like the last problem I had several years ago was a group, admittedly a pretty large group of guys, who thought they could shake me down at a gas station in the early hours of the morning. But typically, civilian gunfights follow the rules of 3. 3 yards, 3 shots. And in fact, Sheriff Jim Wilson, a friend of mine, said to me once, he said, Mike, in a civilian gunfight, after 3 shots, if you know how to shoot, after 3 shots, you're looking around for somebody to shoot. Because even if there are 10 guys, if you've shot 3 of them, the others are gone. They are legging it out of there. And you're not allowed to shoot them in the back, just in case you didn't know that. That's frowned on pretty heavily. It wasn't always, by the way. If they were running away, they were fair game up until the 1960s when the interpretations of the law changed. So you don't need to have 17 rounds in the magazine to get through a civilian gunfight. 6 rounds is going to do it for you. I typically carry a speed strip loader because they're flat instead of a speed loader. But not a problem, ammunition capacity. Also, because civilian gunfights happen at close range, you can push that gun right into them and pull a trigger. You can't do that with a semi-auto, because if you do, you'll knock the slide and barrel out of battery and it won't go off. You'll affect the lockup because that slide will rock back a little bit and unlock the barrel. But that can't happen with a revolver. So if you're at contact distance, a revolver is still going to be effective, maybe more effective. So that's my choice. If I could only have one gun, if I was limited, by finances or by legislation or whatever might happen in the future, if I could only have one gun, it would be a medium frame, .357 Magnum, chambered double action revolver. And like I said, my choice would be my Model 66. I think it's probably the finest fighting revolver ever made. But if you didn't want to buy, they have the 66 reissue now that Smith & Wesson calls it the Classic Series. But if you didn't want to buy that, there are plenty of good double-action revolvers on the market. And my recommendation would actually be a Ruger GP100 with a 4-inch barrel. And that would be my choice. Okay, I know this was not an 18th or 19th century video. And therefore, I'll probably be excoriated for doing this by some folks. But I thought it was an interesting question, and I hope you did too. So if you enjoyed it, thumbs up, you know the deal. And send me a comment. Tell me how much you liked it. I never get tired of reading those. If you didn't like it, well, send me a comment telling me why. That's okay too. Because I read them all, and I might even agree with you. I mean, I might not. If I don't, that's okay. But if I do, I might make some changes. I might think, you know what, that guy making sense. I should probably do that a little bit differently. And if I don't know what I'm doing wrong, then I can't fix it. That's just the way life works. So comment whether you liked it or not. I'm always happy to read them. Read them all. They cause me sometimes to go pour a good stiff drink, but that's okay. I'm a big boy. I can take it. And for the most part, I love the comments. So anyway, I'll be coming back to you in future installments with more historically oriented stuff, I promise. And until then, bye.